Mark, thank you so much for joining us at our Encourage Risk Lancashire Methodist District Synod today, meeting in St Anne's. Mark, you are the coordinator for Movement for Recovery, national role within the Gather movement. Tell us a bit about the Gather movement and your role within it.
Thank you very much, Phil. So Gather Movement's over 10 years old. It's about unity of churches for the sake of transformation of our places. And we see transformation as social, but also cultural and spiritual. And so there are two aspects there. It's learning how to do unity as a group of churches across a town. Of all denominations, but then also how do we do transformation? What does good help look like in our communities? And yeah, it's a great journey that we're on. We in my role with Movement for Recovery, we're particularly thinking at recovery from the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. Most civic and health leaders think that this is, a decade-long recovery that we've got to, dig in for. And in our conversations around the country, civic leaders often say, the church does great work. It's really laudable, but it's often not very coordinated or very strategic from their point of view. And that's a real challenge, isn't it? We do great stuff, but actually we don't necessarily work as a collective of churches across a town as well as we could do. And so Gather Movement's been working to change that, to help churches work collectively much more strategically. And then with some of the tools we've got, like social action mapping, actually then sitting around the table with civic and health leaders as well as church leaders and exploring strategy that can make a greater impact and really address some of the crisis needs that we've got in our communities today.
Mark, thank you. I enjoyed hearing you when you were speaking to church leaders in Lancashire as part of Churches Together in Lancashire, that sense of unity. Now, our theme is encouraging risk to see a vitalised and flourishing church. We will encourage the taking of risks. And one of the strands of that is engaging with local communities to identify local needs and explore how these might be met so the gospel is experienced and heard. From your perspective, Mark, when churches and groups of churches take the risk of engaging with one another and engaging with agencies and local authority and health and other organisations, what's the potential there? What do you see happening when places take risks like that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. I think, the world is changing so rapidly at the moment. In our generation, that just the changes that we've seen come are enormous. And the church, like, many organizations, is in uncharted territory today. And actually, I think we're in danger if we don't go beyond our walls of our church, then actually we may become irrelevant. We may miss out on what God is calling his church to be in this season. I think, some of the risks are, we're all aware that many of us have aging churches. Many of us feeling, the pinch on resources in our churches. They are challenging times. Equally so in our communities, they are very challenging times. And there's a danger, I think, if the church isn't there, reaching out to its community, that it might be, forgotten and it might be remembered that the church wasn't there at such a crisis time in our communities. So I think that's part of the challenge and the risk. I think, there's a challenge to be more ambitious as the church. I get to speak with health leaders who want to address health inequality, the fact that if you're born in one postcode, you won't live as long as you do in another postcode. But actually, of themselves, the health systems, the health organizations won't be able to achieve that on their own. It's going to have to be a truly collective work of communities, with, I think, the church playing a vital role in that. And it's been amazing to begin to understand and see how much the church can bring to really addressing health inequality in our communities. I think the other thing is that in this uncharted times, we have to get used to working with others. If we just work as churches in our own little silo, in our own parish, in our own area, we're in danger of not achieving what we need to achieve in our communities. And so there's this new word that's being banded around, which is systems leadership. And at Gather Movement, we run webinars that you can access via our website and our YouTube channel, which are beginning to explore what does it mean for church leaders to engage with systems leadership, being a collective of churches and a collective cross-sector organizations, actually, as we try and serve and bless our communities. That doesn't mean that we're not distinctive as the Christian church. I think that's all part of it. We have to work out how we continue to be distinctive, sharing our faith. But I think those are some of the calls to take risks as we see it.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to encourage us to take risk. There's people here today who are engaged in all kinds of projects and engaged ecumenically and with others, all sorts of initiatives across Lancashire. It'd be good to hear your little challenge and encourage to take a risk beyond where we are. But also, Gather Movement, you've talked about webinars. You've got an event coming up that I think you're particularly keen to just say, this is here. Tell us about the event that's coming up in June.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. 17th and 18th of June in Derby, we've got a big national conference called I See a New City. Peter's holding up the flyer for that. You can go to the Gather Movement website and sign up for that and also read all about it. We'd love you to come as church leaders to think about what it is to take risks at this time, to engage with church leaders and unity leaders from across the country, the towns and cities across this country who are asking exactly the same thing. And we hope actually that you'll come away with it not only being encouraged by what different church networks are doing around the country, but actually you'll come away with something tangible, something beginnings of a 10-year plan for how you can see transformation, not just of your church, but also of your town or city. Yeah, so do look that up, the Gather Movement website, gathermovement.org, and you'll see all about our conference. We're particularly excited to have someone called Dr. Sarah Williams doing a masterclass at the beginning of the conference. She's a church historian, actually, and is going to help us see where actually church and church leaders have transformed their communities back through history as a real inspiration to us about how we might think about doing that again today.
Mark, thank you so much for your challenge. We wish you well and God bless you in all you're doing.